Is that gonna work? Yeah, I could position the car there. Also, I found this out literally just now. If you've got the engine running and you lock the car, you get 2 horns. It does lock the car, but you get 2 beeps, and I guess it's to remind you you've left the engine running. Cool, right? Literally learnt that just now. Mental. Alright, hello and welcome to the video. Welcome everybody, welcome to 2022. Happy New Year. I hope you've had a great Christmas and a great New Year. This is the first video on my channel of 2022. I'm very, very excited what's to come for the rest of the year. Now, I thought today I'd do a video on the M2 again. You guys haven't really seen it on the channel for a while. I've kind of been reviewing other stuff or been doing a lot of videos with the M2 at events, etc. But I haven't really been doing a one-to-one video like this for a while where I talk about the M2. As you can see by the title, today's video is actually about my experience with the M2 25,000 miles in. I've actually done a 6-month review of this car a long time ago, which you can watch here if you click up here. 25,000 miles. Come this May, I would have owned the car for 2 years. So I kind of want to give an update on that, some things that I've learned since the last review, and also naturally, as a car nerd, when I buy a car, I automatically start thinking about the next car, and I've already got the itch for what to replace this with. So I kind of want to discuss that with you guys and just kind of give you an update on what I'm thinking about this car and the future of it. So this is going to be a long video, so sit tight, go get yourself comfy and go and grab some popcorn and we'll dive in about the M2. Right, so let's start off with a little quick spec walk around of my M2 competition and what I've kind of done with it recently. For starters, it is fully front end PPF, so the whole front end of the car has PPF. We've even got PPF on the wing mirrors. That is Suntech PPF, and the best thing about it is I won it for absolutely free from Suntech. They ran an Instagram competition, TG promoted it. All you had to do was comment your car and they would pick a winner, and they picked me. So I got full front end PPF on the car, which has been absolutely fantastic. I know that the car is in good shape for when I'm doing track days. Would I voluntarily pay £1,500 for full front end PPF on my next car? Probably not, unless it's a Ferrari Pista where the paint costs about 30 grand. If I were to buy another M2, I probably wouldn't bother. I would just leave it as it is. It's probably just cheaper to just do a full front end respray of paint rather than I would just rather keep the £1,500 and use that, spend that elsewhere on the car instead. I've also got a front CS splitter, which I think massively changes the front end of the car. It makes it much more aggressive. Now the reasoning for this is, first of all, I kind of wanted to give the M2 a OEM plus kind of look, and the M2 CS, the CS versions of M cars, in my eyes, are kind of OEM plus. So all of the mods that I've been doing or working towards are CS style mods. So I've gone with the CS front splitter. I've also gone with the CS boot spoiler. This is from Auto ID as well, and then I've got the M Performance carbon rear diffuser as well. So those are the kind of only carbon bits that I've done, and then I'm going to work towards making it look a little bit more like a CS. So I'm going to wrap the roof black, which would be quite cool. I think it would tie in quite nicely with all the carbon or the darker sections of the car. And then I'm also going to be doing carbon mirror caps as well. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, look out for that. I'll probably do a group buy, which is what I did with the the spoiler, I basically put out an Instagram story asking anyone else if they wanted to buy a CS spoiler. A load of people messaged back. We created a group chat, and then we spoke to Auto ID, and they gave us a group discount. I think it was like 10-15%, and we all saved a little bit of money. So look out for that for when I decide to do that on the mirror caps. Also, I think the arch gap on the car is absolutely horrendous. It's pretty big, and it's actually bigger than this, and I'll get to that. But I think the arch gap's horrible. I think it needs spacers as well, and I've always wanted to put springs and spacers on the car. It just gives it a more aggressive stance. Now, you can always go with lowering springs like IBAC or H&R lowering springs. They cost, what, £200? It's a very, very cheap option to lower the car and make it look really cool. But I don't know if this is true, and I don't know if this is the internet kind of blowing things out of proportion, but people say that putting lowering springs on your car ruins the dampers after a certain however many miles, because basically the dampers are set up for a different spring rate, the stock spring suspension, rather than the ones that you've put on the car. So I kind of don't really want to, just in case that is true or is as bad as people make it out to be, I just didn't want to mess with it, and I didn't want to put lowering springs on the car. If I do want to lower it, I'm going to go the full whack, and I'm going to do coilovers. But again, I don't really have £3 to throw at the car right now, and so I haven't done that. So instead, I've gone with a couple of other different options to make the car look lower, kind of give it the illusion that it is lower. And so to start off with, I gave it the front splitter, which kind of just helps make it look a bit more aggressive at the front, helps make it look like it is a little bit lower. And then I've also changed the tyres. So from stock, these cars come with Michelin Pilot Super Sports, and I've put 4S's on, which have been absolutely fantastic in the wet, and I'll touch a little bit on this in a second. But I've also gone wider tyres as well. So I've gone 275s at the back, and I've gone 255 at the front. So I think it's a 10 up in increment, if that makes sense. And by doing that is I've got much wider tyre at the back, so I've got more grip, but also this bit is a lot higher as well, so that kind of fills the arch gap a little bit more, and again kind of just helps make it look a little bit lower, a little bit more aggressive, without messing with the dampers and the springs. No wheel spin whatsoever. Dear me. No wheel spin in winter. That's PS4S's for you. Dear me. I've also got carbon tips, M Performance tips on there. They were silver, and you can watch a video where I install these tips up here in the top right corner, but they were silver. And over this, I installed them last year, and over the time of lots of hard hooning and track days, you can see they've changed colour and gone a bronze brown colour, and also it's the back of the car, I'm sorry, is absolutely filthy. So yeah, I'll sort those out, get them looking silver again, and it'll make the car look nice and pretty. Another thing I want to touch on is I have an aftermarket exhaust on this car. I have a PCW. We'll talk a little bit about that in another video. If you want to watch the differences between stock versus PCW, again, you can click in the top corner here where I've done a video comparing the two. But whilst Paul did a PCW on the car, I also paid him 40 quid to paint the back box black. Now, When I did a track day, the car was too loud for the track, so I had to code the burbles out and code the valves shut permanently. Obviously, I've opened them back up now that I'm not on the track anymore, and we can talk about how you do that, and I'll talk about that in another video. But when you close the valves, it closes these two outer ones, and so the sound only comes through the center section, which the back box is the center section is what makes the car quiet. And so because the center section I'm getting out of breath, because the exhaust fumes were coming through the quieter section, and I'm on track absolutely hooning it, it meant that the back box, just this center section here, got very, very hot with the added pressure of just hooning it very, very hard, keeping revs at like 5,000, 6,000 as you're going down around the track at like 100 miles an hour. This section got very, very hot, and the paint has melted. So I will be visiting Swift Performance at some point over the next month, getting that resprayed again with some better high temperature paint, probably, I don't know, fighter jet paint, something that isn't going to melt so easily. But as you can see by the sides, they are still black. I know the car is very, very dirty at the moment. They're still black, and so it's quite a cheap alternative. Rather than spending £2.5 grand, £3,000 on a Remus back box or an Akpovic or a Miltech back box to get rid of it, just painting it black just hides it. I might slap a photo on when I had it done fresh, and you can't actually see the back box. Even right now, the car is a little bit dirty, but it's quite hard to see the back box with it painted black. And that's been a fantastic mod again for me, because again, it just saves money. Everything is about really doing the cheapest way possible to make the car look very, very nice, without just spending 10, 15 grand, just endless amounts at the car, without just throwing loads of money at the car. I just want to keep it OEM plus, right? Right, let's have a little walk around inside. Inside, to be honest, not a lot has changed. I've got these plastic rubber mats. Stop it, shh, be quiet. I've got these plastic rubber mats which I bought from when I had my M140i, and because it's basically the same wheelbase as the M140i, I've kept them. Reduce, reuse, recycle. I've kept them, and I'm still using them in my M2 right now, and they're just great for this time of weather. You can see how dirty it gets, so just don't ruin the carpets at all. I've also got some metal pedal covers installed on the car. These did not come from factory. I bought these, I think, from CT Carbon. I will link them down below. Everything I've talked about will be linked down below, but basically they're just covers. They're just stuck on top of the original pedals. I haven't had to get any screwdrivers or anything and remove anything. They're literally just kind of like stickers or pedals that have been stuck on, and they were put on about a year ago. Again, you can watch the install video here, and they're still working fantastic as well. My steering wheel is getting a little shiny. I've got two options. I can either clean this, give it that matte effect again like it was brand new, or get it completely retrimmed, which I'm thinking about doing, going to Royal Steering Wheels and just getting an Alcantara, pure Alcantara steering wheel, because frankly, I'm very, very jealous of the GT Porsches that have an all Alcantara steering wheel and a 12 o'clock marker. So I'm quite jealous of those, and I kind of want one as well. So I'm going to do that, and I think it will lift the interior massively. Something very cool that I don't think enough people talk about is these presets here on the car. So I have set up these as quick settings, basically. So if you were to hover over a certain setting, and you find that you really like vehicle settings, you could press and hold number 6 and it will take you to that setting in the future. So for example, now that I've set that up, I can just press 1 when I'm driving and it will give you the tyre temperatures of my car. If I want to see my torque and BHP, I press number 8 and it will just take me straight there to the sport display. So that's really cool. I think these are really, really helpful. If you're not using them, I think you should really do it. It will just kind of give you a quick setting straight to the sections of the iDrive that you're looking for. A few people have asked me where I've got this from, because I don't have Apple CarPlay. I don't fancy spending £250 from BMW to get Apple CarPlay, or doing it as a mod separately in a third-party way. So I just went and bought this. Again, I had this from my M140i, and I love it because I'm able, when I just kind of pull over or stop at traffic lights and I need to just check something on my phone, it's great because I can just put my phone in and I can take it out very easily with one hand, and it stays in there perfectly. Even when I'm doing a track day, it doesn't move around, and I love it. So it's like £7 from Amazon. Again, I'll put a link in the description if you want to find it, but it's great. £7. It gives me kind of the Apple CarPlay experience. I can put Waze on there, Google Maps, etc., and I don't have to spend £250. Right, and let's open up the engine bay and have a look inside. Look at that sexy carbon strut brace running inside the engine, and it's obviously very dusty as well. What makes my M2 competition so special and so different from the OG M2 is the engine running inside it. It's an S55 engine. It puts out 410 bhp and 550 Nm of torque. It is the same engine found in the M3 and the M4, the outgoing generation, the F80 and the F82. But in those cars, they have a different tune. They put out, I think, 450 bhp. They are more powerful. And why have BMW done that? Well, they don't want the cheaper M2 to basically be as powerful and as fast as the M3, M4, which is more expensive. So they've detuned this one, and it's slightly less power. And you really do notice this when you're kind of going through the rev range at the top end, around about 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 RPM. The power does kind of drop off a little bit, and in an M3, M4, if you look at the dyno, the power goes all the way through. So if I slam my foot down now, in Sport Plus, auto everything, it takes a couple seconds for it to start. So if I keep it in manual, I have all the power and the control of when I want the power to come in. All the power and the control, I come in here, I brake, I downshift, more power, etc, etc. The M2 CS, I believe, has basically the same tune and the same power as the M3, M4. So the M2 CS goes all the way, and so in my mind, I would love to put the M2 CS tune on this car. Basically take it to stock M3, M4 power. That's all I really need on the road, even on track. This has actually been fast and powerful. I haven't ever felt like I needed more, but if I did, I think I'd only want to go to M2 CS. I don't really need to take it stage 1 or stage 2. And that kind of brings me on to my next point. This engine, the S55 engine, is very, very famous for the crank hub spinning. Now, again, I don't know if this is kind of the internet blowing things out of proportion, but the S55 and the crank hub spinning is a bad thing, and if that does spin, you're kind of left with a £3,000 or maybe even a £10,000 bill. The internet loves to blow things out of proportion, in my eyes anyway, but if you're left with that bill, it's bad, right? It's going to be very expensive to fix your car, and I haven't extended the warranty on my M2, and the reason for that, you can find a little link up in the video here, but essentially I didn't think the money thrown at it to extend the warranty versus the likelihood of a crank hub spinning was really worth spending the money. I've been on track days, I've done 25,000 miles in this car, and the car has been absolutely perfect, absolutely fantastic, and I haven't had a crank hub spin, right? It's still on stock power, so I'm banking that this car will be fine for the rest of its entire lifetime. In my eyes, it's been reliable, and I think it could just be the internet blowing things out of proportion. Now, that brings me on to the next point, right? Shall I replace this M2 competition with the brand new M2 that's coming this year? We still don't know what it looks like. We have some kind of guesses just by some leaks on the internet, some renders, and we know what the M240i looks like, right? So, the M240i runs the B58 engine. That's the same engine that was in my old M140i, and that engine is actually a newer engine than this one right here. This engine here is an M version of the N55 engine in the old M2, but the B58 engine came out afterwards, after this one right here, so it's more reliable, it's a very, very good engine, very, very torquey, it's very, very tunable, etc, etc. It's very, very reliable, right? So, in my eyes, if they're going to put the S58 engine, the M version of the B58, into the new M2, which is already in the new M3, M4, it means that the new M2 is going to be very reliable. So if I switch out from this car to the new car, one, I'll have extended warranty, right? Warranty for free that I haven't had to pay for. And two, it's going to be reliable. I'm not going to have that crank hub issue that's in the back of my mind. It's always playing in the back of my head. Is it going to spin? Is it not going to spin? Etc, etc. But if I bought the new M2, I wouldn't have that problem. So that's kind of one of the things that's kind of playing in my mind, right? Now, the reason why I kind of don't think I'm going to do this is one, we still don't know what it looks like. Two, it could be ridiculously ugly. And three, I don't know if I'd want to replace an M2 with a new M2. It's kind of like buying an iPhone 11 and then the iPhone 12 comes out and then buying that one and then buying the iPhone 13. It's essentially the same product again. In fact, it will be heavier because we know the M240i is heavy, so it will be heavier than this one. And I don't know if I want that because weight has a very big correlation with how enjoyable a car is to drive, right? You have more weights, you have to have more power in the engines, kind of give it that power to weight ratio. But at the end of the day, right, we've seen with Lotuses, with Porsches, lighter cars makes cars more enjoyable to drive. And I actually think I want to move towards something that's more enjoyable and lighter. So do I want the new M2 that's going to be heavier? Maybe, maybe not. Also, the new M2 will probably have the ZF gearbox, which is in the current M3, M4, the new one with the S58 engine. So, the ZF gearbox versus the DCT gearbox in my car. This is very, very clunky at low speeds. You do kind of like judder when you're kind of at traffic lights. But it's fantastic, it's very smooth, it's very fast, it shifts very, very quickly, but the ZF gearbox does have a delay. I've driven the new M4, and when I downshift, there is a delay. It is a little bit slower. So do I want that ZF gearbox? It was fantastic in my M140i. It made it very, very drivable around town and very, very smooth. So maybe I can kind of ignore that fact and think of just the ZF gearbox as something slightly different to enjoy. Who knows? So that's a possibility of what I could replace the M2 with. I'm also just going to touch on some figures. I get around about 23 miles per gallon, and there's a 52-litre tank, petrol tank, fuel tank in the car, which means that I get maybe, 300 miles, so I am going to the petrol station quite a lot, maybe once every 5 days to fill up, and it costs around about 50–60 pounds to fill up on fuel. So yeah, there's some figures. There's the car. Let's go for a drive and we'll talk about some other factors about the car. Right, so PCW modified exhaust. This is the startup, not even Sport Plus. I'm just going to start it up, alright? Turn it off, turn it back on again, it will still do a cold start. So I'll let it finish and then we'll do some revs. Now I absolutely hate it when people rev the car when it's still doing a cold start. It makes the car sound like it's just not very good, there's no burbles. Oh my god, the OPF and the M2 competition has ruined the car. It's not, alright? I'm gonna insert a clip when I had my stock exhaust and I hadn't done anything to it. Just listen how good it sounds, right? You don't need to have an exhaust on it. It sounds good. Just let it finish its cold start. Impressive, right? Anyway, I have a PCW exhaust. Like I mentioned, you can look at the differences between the two. I'm going to do a proper video with this car and this exhaust at some point, so I'm not going to go too much into this right now, but I'm just going to give you a couple of revs, right? Efficient and Sport Plus. So efficient. Still nice and sociable, right? And Sport Plus. Let's go before I get kicked out. Right, so we've hopped inside the car now, driving around. It's not too loud. The wider tyres on the PS4S's make the cabin a little bit louder anyway. I mean, this car is kind of quite loud inside the cabin when I had the old tyres on. It's louder than my M140i is. And I think that's just because there's wider tyres, maybe a little bit less sound insulation, but it is quite loud here in the cabin. When I'm bombing it down the motorway, I have to have the music quite loud because otherwise I can't hear the music. Now, let's talk about the tyres then, because PS4Ss, absolute must. No matter what car you own, you should have PS4Ss installed on your car. They have been absolutely fantastic in the wet. I did a whole track day at Landau in the wet, perfectly fine. It had so much grip that when I was going around corners, I was actually having to drive in MDM to try and throw the car out and kind of get a little drift, because they just grip so well in the wet. They're also brilliant in the dry, obviously. Obviously not compared to Cup 2s, the more track version of the PS4Ss, because the temperatures, they kind of get up to temperature a lot quicker and they're not so great when the temperatures are so high. But as an all-round tyre, PS4Ss have been fantastic for this car. Now, because the tyres are so good in terms of grippiness, and because I've gone wider at the back, it means that the car is maybe no longer as much fun, if that makes sense. In the sense that now when I do want to kind of do a little drift, kick the back end out a little bit, I have to really try really hard. I've got to really be quite aggressive with how I turn it and add power in to get the back end out, which makes it a little bit annoying, but over time I've kind of learned how the car drives, I've learned how much I want to do it, and so now I think if I were to step into an M2 competition with super sports and maybe thinner tyres, I think I'd probably send it too hard and probably do a 180, 360 degree spin on the road. But it is what it is. It means that I've got ridiculous amounts of grip. It's dry and greasy out today. I'll pull it in Sport Plus, floor it. Just no wheel spin whatsoever. Absolutely fantastic. That will touch on to my second point as well, and the road is closed, so I'm gonna have to go around somehow. That will touch on to my second point. Just then, right, flooring it, you can see that there's either a gearbox or a turbo lag. That was in Sport Plus. That's everything in Sport Plus. Gear ratio all the way at the top, so most aggressive shifts and downshifts, most aggressive throttle response. There was still turbo lag. I put my foot on the ground, it was 1, 2, 3 seconds before I took off. Now, this car has actually taught me that I have to drive with the paddles. I can't drive around in Sport Plus letting the gearbox decide which gear that I need to be in. With my M140i, when I used to kind of drive around, I used to basically just leave it in Sport Plus and let the car decide when to shift gear into each corner. This car is basically more naturally aspirated in terms of how it's mapped. Now, I think the reason for this is because the M3, M4 that came out before the M2 did, especially the M2 competition, it had too much low down torque, and a lot of people were binning the cars. They were basically just flooring it, and there was too much power, it was spinning, and they were wrapping it around trees. And so the M2 competition, they mapped it so that a lot more of the torque and the power is higher up in the rev range. That again makes it harder to kick the back end out and do drifts, etc. But secondly, it means that I have to drive the car with the paddles so that I keep the rev range, high up in the rev range, so I have all the power that I need to. That's actually been great because it's taught me to drive with the paddles. And so now naturally when I get into other cars, I also drive with the paddles. It makes me feel like an F1 driver. So I'll give you another demonstration. I'll go back into Sport Plus. Okay, I'm in third gear right now, and I'm just gonna put my foot down, right? Ready? There we go. See that kind of like that lag? It takes a little while, but instead, if I keep it in manual, I'm in third gear, it's more instant. I can just go when I want to go. I brake coming into a corner, I downshift because see? And there's no wheel spin. I was all the way up at 5,000 revs, and I floored it just then. I'll do it again. Second gear. Couple of burbles, I'm in 5,000 revs, floor it, no wheel spin, because the tyres are so good, and again I'm using paddles with that naturally aspirated. There's just more instant power and torque when I need it. So this is maybe more of a pet peeve about the car, something that I noticed straight away stepping out my M140i and going to this M2. It's more naturally aspirated, but again, the power does die when you get up to the top of the rev range, which is annoying, but it is what it is. Go and buy an M2 CS, Will, if you're really that bothered about it. Right, here's another thing I want to talk about. I've turned off ASD, active sound design. That's the fake sound that gets pumped into the car, into the cabin. I've turned that off. One, because now I can hear the whooshing and the turbo sounds, the induction sounds coming from the engine ahead of me. I'll see if I can replicate it. I have to go really high gear and then put my foot down. Nope, let me try it again. Let me drop a gear so I get a little bit more power. Don't know if you can hear that. I'll try it again. Don't know if you can hear that through the camera, but basically without the fake sound pumping through the speakers, I can hear the induction sound coming through the engine, and also I can hear the exhaust coming out the back, all the sound coming out the back of my car, like how cars should do. How old cars, how they were supposed to be back in the old days, how you could hear sound coming out from the back as you put your foot down. Also, with an exhaust on the car, the two tones, the pitches, they're all different, right? You're gonna have like a specific BMW coded sound coming through the speakers, and then the actual sound coming out the back, and they don't sound the same, and it sounds a little bit confusing. So I basically coded it out so you can just hear the sound from the back. Now, that means that I can be super antisocial when I'm driving around town, because the sound bounces off all the walls. And if you drive up to about 5,000 revs, and just as you get to about 4 and you floor it and take your foot off just after it goes past 5, you basically get bangs. So I'll demonstrate it here. Right, go into first gear, all the way up to 3, 4, 5, and it's just on demand. Completely antisocial. So you can just go through town just doing these burbles. And I don't have the active sound blocking it. Downshift. Right, let's have a little talk about money. Everyone likes to talk about money, they like to hear about money. How much does this car cost, etc, etc. If you're going to buy an M2 competition, what are you kind of expecting in terms of what to pay? So I put about 4.5 grand down on this car as a deposit. I've got a PCP and I'm paying around about £500 a month, okay? You can look on Magnitude as a finance calculator and you can kind of work out roughly how much these cars cost on finance. So, about £500 a month. Now, you've got to tax this car. Road tax has now been gone up to about £495, basically almost £500 for the year. I think it's like £475. The government have put it up. I haven't got to the point where I need to do it and where I need to renew it. So, because this car is over £40,000, I need to pay an extra premium on road tax. So I'm paying around about £450, £500 a year now for road tax. I've talked about fuel, 50, 60 quid, around about every 5 to 7 days. Servicing, I've recently done, I haven't had this car serviced many times because I've only done 25,000 miles, it's only really 3 years old, but it's around about £250 to service. That was just like an oil change, etc, etc. I've had brake pads, I've done track content, I've done track pads, brake fluid, etc. That's a different cost. I'm going to talk about that in another video in terms of what it costs to track a car. But that leads me on to my second point. This car is very cheap to insure on the track, right? It's £180 for me to track this car and insure it. That's £180 per track day. Now, my dad's C63, which costs £70,000, that costs him £370 to insure. That's before you do tyres, brake pads, the actual track day itself, all the fuel, 370 quid just to insure. So that makes that car very expensive to take on track, and so he's not going to bother. So my problem is, if I were to replace this car with a different car, I've got to then look at how much that car is then going to cost to insure on track. Now, naturally, with this car, I want to go upwards, okay? I don't have kids, I don't have a dog, so I want a two-seater sports car, preferably a mid-engined two-seater sports car, because you've got better grip around track, it's lighter, faster, it just looks sick, it's really low down to the ground, proper race car, etc, etc. So what kind of really are my options? I've got the Lotus Emira, £70,000 car. That's around about, finance is looking about £12,000 deposit, about £700 a month. You've got the Cayman GTS, so the 4 litre, and I know that Lotus have based their finance deals on Porsche, and so it's going to be the same again, about £700 a month. You've also got, if you know I do really well in my job and I get pay rises, etc, etc, and I'm feeling like spending a bit more money, maybe a Cayman GT4, a 718 GT4, maybe even a 918 GT4. Again, you're looking at like £10,000 deposit, £7,000 to £1,000 a month to PCP the car. Essentially, my point is, I'm looking at paying double the amount of the M2 on monthly PCP. Don't forget, I'm also putting double the amount of deposit as well. But am I really getting double the car in return? Maybe I am. The kind of the development gone into the car, you know, the materials, the interior, the prestige you get with, you know, a Porsche versus a BMW, etc, etc, right? Maybe you are getting double the value, but I'm paying double the amount of money as well. And then also to track that car, which I want to take my cars on track, I want to enjoy them, I want to really fully experience them safely to their full potential, I'm going to be spending like £400 a month, or £400 per track day, plus all the brake pads, the tyres, etc. It's going to be very, very expensive. And so that brings me back to this M2. It's such a good car, bang for buck. I'm able to take this car on track, spend £160 at Bedford next month, plus £180 track insurance, so you know, £300 in total, just to have fun on the track. And then I pay the fuel, and I've already done the brake upgrade, etc. So I'm having a great time on track, and I'm having a lot of fun on track for not really a lot of money. And if I were to step into one of these other cars in future, I'm going to be spending a lot more, and that kind of really puts me off getting one of those cars, and that's kind of the problem. Said it a little bit too hard. So, to end the video, what are my plans with the M2? Okay, I've still got 2 years on the PCP. I've got a 4-year PCP deal. Okay, so I've got well over 2 years until I get another car, or what to do with the car. This car has been absolutely fantastic for me. Okay, it's made me want more. When I go on track and when I'm hooning around, I want to sit a little bit lower. Okay, I want more grip going around the corner, because sometimes you're turning and you're really leaning over because there's so much oversteer. I always want a little bit more, and so that's what's making me go towards, you know, an Emira and a GT4 and a GTS, etc, etc. But I've recently gone on holiday. Okay, I drove down to Brighton for over the New Year, and I had my family in the car. The back seats are fantastic. You can get myself, I can sit behind myself, I can get a full adult in the back. There's loads of headroom. The new M240i is more of a coupe shape, and there's actually less headroom in the back. Even in my dad's C63, which is a longer car, right, it's a bigger car, there's actually less headroom in the back than my car. I can sit in the back of my car and it's absolutely fantastic. So I can fit 3 adults in this M2. There's plenty of storage space as well. So these are kind of things that you're losing out with when you get a 2-seater sports car. Again, I've touched on the money, how much extra I'm going to have to be paying monthly, and then versus am I getting double the amount of car, and then also the track money, the costs I'm going to have to throw in extra to go on track and enjoy that car. this car has been absolutely fantastic for me. It's fast, it looks bloody good, it's so aggressive, I love the paint colour, it sounds amazing now. I'm going to put the Sport Plus, downshift. Burble, 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 burble. You know, I've made it sound really good. It sounds good, it looks good, it has the prestige, people know what an M car is, it's got those wide hips, that nice boxy aggressive look. It is an absolutely fantastic car, and so I really don't know what to do. I've really had a struggle with what to replace this car with. Now, I don't want to go M3, M4, I kind of feel like there's a dead spot from 50 grand all the way up to 100 grand. Really, you've only got big heavy saloons and coupes, right? M3, M4, C63s, RS5s, etc, etc. Or you've got your two-seater sports cars. So I really don't know what to do. I don't want to get a saloon, I don't have kids, etc, like I've mentioned, so I'm really struggling. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait for the Lotus Emira to come out. The reason why I haven't put a deposit down for the Lotus Emira and the first editions is I want to wait for that car to be released first. I want to wait for the first cars to be coming out of the factory. I want to hear test drives. I want to test drive one myself. I want to hear reviews and see what they're really like. I also want to see storage space as well. That boot at the back, from what I've seen at the launch, I mean, it had a load of batteries in it, so I couldn't really tell anyway. In terms of storage space, it doesn't really look that good. Maybe the new M2, we've touched on this at the beginning, so I want to wait for that to be released as well. I want to do a test drive, and you guys will see it on the channel. I want to do a test drive, I want to try that out, see what it's like, see if it's butt ugly, and then decide. So really, what am I going to be doing with this car? I'm going to keep it at least for another 18 months. And I'm just going to track the hell out of it and properly enjoy it. Do the mods that we've been talking about, the roof, the mirror caps, just really enjoy it, take it on track, have loads of fun at a cheap, costly rate of going on track, and just basically wait and see what is available in about 18 months time and see where I'm going. Maybe even keep this car long term and take it to 80,000-90,000 miles, right? It can do everything I need it to. It can take all my friends and family. I can put a load of stuff in here. It is fast. It's got the reputation. It's amazing. It handles really well. And it sounds really good. Why do you need anything more, right? So thank you very much for watching. It's been a very long video. I am aware of that. But if you have stuck around, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. I think there's some mad statistic on my YouTube where only 10% of my viewers are actually subscribed. So if you have watched more than one video before, please subscribe. But yeah, I'll see you later on in another video. Happy 2022, and stay safe, everybody. Can I do a little drift out of here? Yeah, I can.